Elbone here, and I've got everything you need to know before you watch this weekend's 2024 Brazilian Grand Prix, including a recap of this past weekend's highly dramatic Mexico City Grand Prix. Elbone! Yes, my name is still Elbone instead of J-Bone because I cannot buy correct race predictions right now. But before I get into that, let's talk about the Mexico City Grand Prix. Here are the three biggest stories from the F1 Mexico City Grand Prix. First, there was that battle between World Drivers' Championship contenders Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. Just 1 week after their tussle in Austin at the USGP that resulted in a controversial penalty for Lando and made him lose ground to Max in the World Drivers' Championship, the two championship contenders came together yet again this past weekend in Mexico, this time in even crazier fashion, where Max forced Lando off track at turn 4 and followed that up by overtaking Lando off track at turn 8, much to the chagrin of Charles Leclerc, who overtook the pair of them while they were outside track limits. This battle was far less controversial rules-wise than the one in Austin, as it was apparent to every single sane person watching that Max did indeed commit multiple penalties while battling Lando, and that led to the stewards deciding to drop the absolute banhammer on Max, hitting him with not one, but two 10-second penalties that he had to serve during his pit stop. It literally looked like his pit crew was doing the mannequin challenge out there in the pit lane. They were standing still for what felt like forever. However, I'd argue that it was far more controversial overall, if not rules-wise, as it has thrust the reputation of the unyielding Mad Max back into the spotlight in the middle of a title fight, and also opened up a huge driving standards and rules of engagement debate that will surely be going on for the rest of the season and beyond. More on that later. Second, there was Carlos Sainz's absolutely dominant weekend. It was clear, given his pace across all three practice sessions, that Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz was on to have a solid weekend in Mexico, but I don't think even he would have predicted just how well he'd perform during qualifying and the Grand Prix. Sainz had not one, but two laps in Q3 of qualifying that were good enough for pole position, which is sensational, and also which he made sure we all knew about right after he took pole. And then Sainz went on the next day to have about as solid a drive as you will see in F1 and won the race handily to accomplish his goal of winning one more race as a Ferrari driver before he heads to Williams next season. Williams, you clearly got a good one, as Sainz looked absolutely incredible out there. Sainz's win not only made him the 6th 2024 F1 driver with multiple wins, a feat that has only happened one other time in F1 history back during the 1981 season, but it also made it back-to-back wins for Ferrari and helped propel the prancing horses ahead of Red Bull to P2 in the Constructors' Championship. And third, there was Checo Perez's dreadful home Grand Prix weekend. The warm welcome from Checo's home fans in Mexico was just about the only thing warm about Checo's home Grand Prix this past weekend. Well, other than his hot seat. It all started during practice, where Checo never managed to finish higher than P9. At this point, Checo fans and people rooting for Checo could and did just delude themselves into thinking that it was, because of high fuel load practice runs or picking up tire data or a non-indicative run strategy. However, that delusion was shattered during qualifying. Checo's race weekend was pretty much over before it even began when he mystified the world by somehow, some way, qualifying P18 at his home circuit that he literally knows so well he can drive with his eyes closed. Things actually were briefly looking up for Checo right after race start when he made up 5 positions on lap 1 before the safety car was called out for that Yuki Albon crash, but then it was revealed that he would be receiving a 5-second time penalty for a false start, and water found its level. He was so far ahead of the line, I don't know what he was thinking. Checo then got into a way too heated battle with Liam Lawson, the guy who's most likely going to take his Red Bull seat away from him. That Checo lost, which is bad for Checo, and that also damaged Checo's car, which is even worse for Checo, and it damaged his car enough to effectively end his race. The cherry on top is that Red Bull pitted Checo for soft tires at the end of the race in an attempt to steal the fastest lap point from Ferrari, and he could not even do that, mostly because of how damaged his car was from that battle with Liam. At a race weekend where we all hope to see Checo rebound in front of his home fans, he actually went and had arguably his worst race ever. Not great. Some additional stories from Mexico that I want to highlight are how Fernando Alonso became the first driver in F1 history to reach 400 race entries. That was the only positive from this miserable past weekend for Fernando that included an illness and a race retirement due to a cooling issue. And how Haas, achieved a huge double points finish to extend their lead over VCarb and give me just enough Haas delusion syndrome to think that they actually have a shot at overtaking Aston Martin and finishing P5 in the World Constructors' Championship. More on that later. Before we move on to talking about the Brazilian Grand Prix, we unfortunately need to talk about how my 3 bona fide Mexico City Grand Prix race predictions turned out. I'm so bad at these. My first prediction was that a Ferrari driver would win the Mexico City Grand Prix, and ding ding, Elbone got that one right. Elbone! Carlos Sainz, of course, won the race after a dominant race weekend where he was always in charge. I knew Ferrari were going to keep the winning train rolling in Mexico after seeing how dominant they were in Austin, and boy does it feel good to correctly predict a winner after being so wrong for so long. Now this is where it gets ugly. My second prediction was that Liam Lawson would finish in the points once again to make it back-to-back points finishes since his return to F1, and he would have if 2 people weren't jerks to him during the race. First, Checo rudely picked a fight with and then lost said fight to Liam Lawson, which made Liam lose a bunch of time when Checo should have just waited until the main straight to attempt an overtake on him. Then, Franco Colapinto rudely caused a collision with Lawson at the exit of turn 2 that destroyed Liam's front wing and ended his race. Franco received a 10-second penalty after the race for this collision, but Liam and I don't care about that because we're just mad that it prevented Liam from finishing in the points. And last and least, my third race prediction was that Checo Perez would finish in the top 5 for the first time since Miami 14 races ago. Yeah, you know what? I'm not going to talk about this one. Don't want to. Not going to. Just not going to do it. Let's move on, because talking about this for any longer might make me cry, or laugh so hard I cry, or cry so hard I laugh. Yet another 1 for 3 poop on a stick here puts me at 27 for 61 for the season thus far with my predictions, which, yes, I am fully aware is still below my goal of 50%, so please stop commenting that I'm below 50% on the season with my predictions, because I know you guys, okay? Seriously, do not go comment that right now that I'm below 50% with my predictions, because I will read it and it will make me upset, so do not comment that. I only have 4 more race weekends to get back above 50%, starting with this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix, so make sure that you stay tuned all the way to the end of this episode to check out those predictions so you can root for me all race weekend long, or root against me. Also, while you're here, be sure you're subscribed to my channel so you can get my F1 updates all season and off-season long. And while you're subscribing, please leave a like on this video so that YouTube likes Elbone more. I'm trying to get 2,000 likes on this video. If you could please help me out by liking it right now. Like right now. Now it's time to look ahead and talk about this weekend's Brazilian Grand Prix. But first, do you hate spending forever researching recipes to cook, walking endlessly around the grocery store looking for all the ingredients you need for those recipes, portioning out all your ingredients to match those recipes, and then ending up with a bunch of leftover ingredients afterwards? If so, then you need HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. HelloFresh delivers all the pre-portioned ingredients you'll need to make easy homemade meals. All the proteins, veggies, sauces, spices, and more arrive in your box along with simple instructions that walk you through each step in the cooking process. HelloFresh has tons of options for whatever you're craving. Choose from a changing menu of over 50 recipes each week. I love cooking, but sometimes life gets in the way and I don't have time to do all the prep work that comes with it, such as finding recipes, grocery shopping, and mise en place, aka preparing my ingredients. You like that fancy French term? That's why I love HelloFresh. They not only do all the hard background work for you so you can just enjoy cooking, but their recipes are also delicious. Get 10 free meals at hellofresh.com/freejbone. Applied across 7 boxes, new subscribers only, varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to hellofresh.com/freejbone. The Formula 1 Brazilian Grand Prix, the official name of which is the São Paulo Grand Prix, except nobody calls it that, takes place this weekend at Autódromo José Carlos Pache, aka Interlagos, in Cidade Dutra, City of São Paulo, State of São Paulo, Brazil, South America, Earth, Solar System, Milky Way, Laniakea Supercluster, Universe. The Brazilian Grand Prix weekend is a sprint weekend and thus starts this Friday, November 1st, which will consist of free practice 1 and sprint race qualifying. Saturday, November 2nd, will consist of the sprint race and Grand Prix qualifying. That's also my wife's birthday. Shout out to the Bone Queen. And Sunday, November 3rd, will consist of the Grand Prix. The circuit at which the race takes place, Interlagos, is the 3rd shortest circuit on the F1 calendar, coming in at just 4.309 kilometers or 2.68 miles in length. And the Brazilian Grand Prix will be contested over the course of 71 laps around its 15 turns. Here are some things you may not know about the Formula 1 Brazilian Grand Prix's Interlagos circuit. First, did you know that the Brazilian Grand Prix circuit is not actually named Interlagos? No, the Interlagos circuit's real name is Autódromo José Carlos Pache. It's named after Brazilian racing driver José Carlos Pache, who won the 1975 Brazilian Grand Prix at Interlagos before tragically passing away in a plane crash 2 years later. Next, did you know Interlagos used to be almost twice as long as it is today? For 7 Formula One Brazilian Grand Prix between 1973 and 1980, Formula One raced on an Interlagos circuit that was 7.960 kilometers long as opposed to the 4.309 kilometer Interlagos circuit of today. The layout change was made due to safety concerns on account of its bumpy surface that absolutely did not agree with the ground effect cars of the time when it came to downforce creation. Next, did you know that the Brazilian Grand Prix hasn't always taken place at Interlagos? The only circuit other than Interlagos to ever host a Brazilian Grand Prix is Jacarepaguá in Rio de Janeiro, which hosted 10 Brazilian Grand Prix from 1978 to 1989. This circuit was completely demolished in 2012 so that the site of the former F1 circuit could be used to house part of the Olympic Park for the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Summer Olympics, which is sad because now those former Olympic facilities are in disrepair and we could have had that racetrack still. Additionally, did you know that Interlagos has the longest pit lane on the entire F1 calendar? Its pit lane is around 1,140 meters or 0.7 miles in length and spans from just before turn 15 all the way until about halfway down the DRS straight between turns 3 and 4. Get a load of this. During a lap in which you pit at Interlagos, around a quarter of your lap's total distance is spent in the pit lane. That is crazy. Here are your storylines to follow for this weekend's 2024 Brazilian Grand Prix. First, everyone on Earth needs to be watching Formula One right now because both of its season-long championships are coming down to the wire. With 4 Grand Prix and 2 sprint races remaining this season, just 47 points separate Red Bull's Max Verstappen and McLaren's Lando Norris in the World Drivers' Championship, and just 54 points separate Red Bull, McLaren, and Ferrari in the World Constructors' Championship. This is insanely close, especially when you compare it to last season where both championships had already been decided by now. In the Drivers' Championship, Lando Norris could catch Max Verstappen as soon as the Las Vegas Grand Prix if things go very right for him and very wrong for Max, both this weekend in Brazil and then in Vegas, which would leave 2 Grand Prix and a sprint race of absolute chaos for these two to battle it out for the championship at the end of the season. In the Constructors' Championship, things are even closer. For instance, just this weekend in Brazil alone, a team could score a maximum of 59 points if they finish 1-2 in both the sprint race and Grand Prix. And because the gap between the top 3 F1 teams right now is just 54 points, it would take even less than that happening for any of the 3 top teams to be in the lead after this weekend if things go really bad for the other 2 teams. Formula One is so amazing when it's this close, and because it does not always happen, you need to make sure you're watching when it does. Your second storyline, breaking news F1 fans, my Haas delusion syndrome is back and better than ever, or worse than ever depending on who you ask. USA-based Haas F1 team have easily been this Formula One season's craziest success story. Haas finished last season dead last out of all F1 teams in the World Constructors' Championship, which led to them firing their popular team principal Gunther Steiner in the offseason and replacing him with longtime Haas engineer Ayao Komatsu. With the worst car in F1 and a new leader at the helm, nobody expected anything from Haas this year or next, because we all thought they'd just be, punting on 2024 and 2025 to prepare for the new 2026 regulations. And folks, that could not be further from the case. I don't know what happened over there, but Haas looked absolutely incredible this season and have finished in the points in over half of this season's 20 Grand Prix. They even hauled in 12 points during the Austrian Grand Prix alone, which is exactly how many points they scored all of last season. Haas are currently sitting in 6th place in the World Constructors' Championship just 1 year after finishing in last, and because this Haas success has my Haas delusion syndrome back and arguably more severe than ever, maybe not as severe as it was after K-Mag's pole in Brazil, but still, I firmly believe that Haas will do well enough in this season's remaining races to leapfrog Aston Martin and take 5th place in the Constructors' Championship to tie their best ever season result. And I think that run's all going to start this weekend with a solid performance in Brazil. Haas! Your third storyline, Formula One is currently having its own version of the NFL's "what is a catch" debate. The line between legally aggressive defending at a corner and forcing another driver off track has never been more unclear in Formula One than it is right now. This ambiguity surrounding what's allowed and what isn't springs from how we've seen numerous penalties for forcing a driver off track and the opposing overtaking a driver off track, be enforced in both Austin and Mexico City, despite some instances looking very similar and not both resulting in the same penalties. It's said that there will be a meeting before the Qatar Grand Prix to discuss the matter, but because there are still 2 Grand Prix and a sprint race between now and then, I fully expect to see more ambiguous battles and penalties that could really shake things up in Brazil and Las Vegas. Your final storyline, F1's hottest rivalry is not Max Verstappen versus Lando Norris, it's Checo Perez versus Liam Lawson. While Max and Lando are battling for this year's World Drivers' Championship before inevitably battling for it again next year and then the next year and then the next year, Checo Perez and Liam Lawson are quite literally battling each other for their lives at the moment. Or should I say their livelihoods. Red Bull have been very open about how Daniel Ricciardo was replaced by Liam Lawson at VCARB mid-season to give Liam a shot at proving if he's worthy of being given Checo Perez's Red Bull seat for 2025, because Checo, who's currently under contract to drive for Red Bull next season, has had an absolutely awful season this year that's fallen well below both Red Bull's and his standards. When Checo and Liam meet on track, the fact that they're battling not just for position, but literally for a seat at Red Bull and the future of their careers makes their fights extra spicy and way more heated than they otherwise would be and than any other driver's fights are right now. This is evidenced by their extremely chippy battle in Mexico that led to Liam shooting the bird to Checo as he overtook him on the main straight, and Checo saying after the race that Liam needs to change his attitude if he wants to make it in F1. When it comes to Checo and Liam's battles, it's not just personal, it's also professional, and that is why they're appointment television anytime they come together from now through the remainder of the season. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, here are my 3 bona fide race predictions for the 2024 F1 Brazilian Grand Prix. Again, my name is currently L-Bone instead of J-Bone until I stop taking so many L's and am back at or above 50% on the season with my F1 predictions. I'm currently at 27 for 61, aka around 44%, so I need to go 3 for 3 here to make up some ground so I don't end the season below 50%. L-Bone. My first race prediction is that a McLaren driver will win the Brazilian Grand Prix. I know it seems crazy to not roll with Ferrari again here after their back-to-back wins, but let's not forget that Lando still had a solid P2 performance in Mexico and could have been on for a win had he not lost so much time behind Max. And let's not forget that last season in Brazil, Lando had the fastest lap and finished P2 an absurd 25.9 seconds ahead of P3. Lando finished behind Max in P1 last year at Interlagos, but because the McLaren is now faster than the Red Bull, I like a McLaren driver, probably Lando, to win in Brazil. My second race prediction is that Max Verstappen will receive a penalty during the Brazilian Grand Prix sprint race and or Grand Prix. Interlagos is a circuit at which Max Verstappen is famous for getting his elbows out, and with how aggressively he's both attacking and defending at the moment as he tries to hold off Lando Norris from overtaking him in the World Drivers' Championship, I think Max takes a penalty of some sort in one of this weekend's race sessions. My third race prediction is that Franco Colapinto will finish in the points at Interlagos. Because the Argentinian Grand Prix hasn't existed since 1998, which is 5 years before Franco Colapinto was even born, the Brazilian Grand Prix is the closest thing that Colapinto has to a home Grand Prix. Sao Paulo is around 1,700 kilometers or 1,000 miles from Brazil's border with Argentina, and because of this proximity to his home country and how Logan Sargent managed a P11 at Interlagos last year in a Williams, I like Franco to finish in the points at Interlagos. And last but not least, here's my prediction for the top 5 finishers in the Brazilian Grand Prix with zero reasoning nor explanation. P5, Oscar Piastri, P4, George Russell, P3, Max Verstappen, P2, Charles Leclerc, and P1, Lando Norris. Let me see your Brazilian Grand Prix race predictions in the comments. Go comment right now. Special shout out to my top YouTube channel members, Joe Max's number 1 hater Snow, Brian Linton, Wolf Loves Racing, Waffleopagus, Melissa Cruz, and David Hake. Mash that join button just below this video to get your name shouted out right here in future videos. And until next time, folks, L-Bone. L-Bone.